People have judged me and asked me why I would do something so stupid or risk my freedom when I have children, like I'm putting them in a bad spot. But what people don't understand is I was not free.
I just felt so heavy and weighted down, both body, mind, and spirit. I had this moment that they sat me down in a chair and I waited and I waited and I waited and I waited. And it was a very pretty vintage flowery chair, and I felt nothing flowery in that moment. And I waited there for so many, what felt like hours, that I thought they perhaps forgot about me. And I sat there in the corner in this chair in the admin building thinking, that's fine. I can just do my whole year here. I don't even care. I'll just sit right here in this chair for an entire year. I'm perfectly fine with that. What happens when they come get me from that chair was a very nice woman who ended up being my counselor. And she was one of the nicest people to me in my entire prison bed. And she processed me in, and she was very gentle and very kind with her words. And I won't say she felt sorry for me, but she was definitely empathetic to my situation and knew of my story because they are informed of who is coming in. And she was encouraging. And that was a relief because I wasn't sure how I would be treated. Having been a previous correctional worker, I didn't know if they were going to all treat me like I, betrayed them personally. Having me high of releasing a documentary.
A Rancho woman sentenced for accepting a bribe while working for an Indiana prison, Shauna Boatwright.
And then, a week and a half or maybe 2 weeks later, becoming an inmate. On one hand, it kept me strong. I didn't personally have the ability to follow along of who was following, how many followers it got, the emails, the comments on the film. However, I had my support system keep me up to date, and it did give me strength when I heard that we had over 40,000 views, and it gave me strength to hear some of the comments that were said and some of the emails that were sent were read to me. I couldn't personally read the emails, but they were read to me, and it filled me with encouragement and, as cheesy as this might be, but the strength to go on, the strength to get up. There's a lot of women in prison that sleep their time away. And I get it. Time goes quicker as you're sleeping. And the information I got about the documentary gave me the motivation to wake up consistently early in the morning and to find productivity in my day, every single day. But honestly, the documentary not only helped me in my personal life right before I went and sharing my story and kind of taking back the power of my trauma, but it also allowed, I'll say it helped me with the inmate population. And that's the other thing. Don't ever go to prison and lie about who you are, because we are in a day of social media and people are gonna find out. Because I was a correctional worker, and that can be problematic in prison. But when the girls heard the narrative of my story, they didn't care that I was a correctional worker. I remember walking outside and somebody stopped me and said, "Hey, everybody's talking about you in this dorm." And I said, "Why?" And they were like, "Oh, they call you the redhead." If you remember, before I had red hair. This is my normal color. But they said the red-haired girl, there's a documentary about her. So somebody who had self-surrendered had seen it and then was telling everybody about it. So it was the first time I remember the murmuring about me in my documentary came to exist. So then people were writing home or sending emails home being like, hey, look this up, look this up, look this up. There was a rumor that I was there for the show 60 days locked up. That rumor faded pretty quickly. But people embraced me overall and were empathetic to my story. I remember one, she wasn't scary, but I mean, I wouldn't pick a fight with her, but she was one of the bigger girls in status at the time around there. And I remember her and I being the only ones in the TV room. And she looked at me and she said, "Boat right, you keep your chin up and you hold your head high, because at the end of the day, you did what every mama should do." And I remember being like, whoa, because she was always kind of abrasive with me. And that was a moment that I knew she knew my story. And she was still giving me accolades for doing the hard thing. Not that what I did was right. I'm not cheering on my crime, but more so, it was a really hard decision to make a bad choice. This thought always slams a lump in my throat. But right before I surrendered, I had my babies, and I knew I was going to miss their birthday, so I threw them an early birthday party. And I had explained to them what was going to be happening because they already knew. They were informed by other parties outside of my home that I was going to prison. So the opportunity for me to tell them myself and to help them through that was robbed from me. But research shows that when the incarcerated are honest with their children, they're actually more resilient to it. So it worked in my benefit that I was able to have open discussion with both of them leading up to this surrender. So they understood that they were going to be going to live with their father upon me going to surrender. And I was able to let them know I was going to be safe and let them know that I was going to be okay, and I would be communicating with them and doing video chats and calling them, and it was going to be okay. And the day that it was time to take them to their dads, this part's so hard. My daughter looked at me and said, "Is it time?" And I just nodded. And she just dropped to her knees and screamed the most horrific cry of grief from her little body. And I just dropped on the floor with her and cradled her for I don't know how long. And my son just stood next to us staring at us. And it was horrible. At that moment, it's excruciating. And so the day that I left, a year ago today, it was an ice storm. And we start driving, friends of mine pick me up, and we start driving out of Illinois. And the further south we got, the sunnier it got, which would make most people happy when you're on the way to Florida. And I just sunk deeper and deeper into this heavy state, just staring out the window. I remember looking at other cars and seeing people smile, and going into Buc-ee's gas station, which is I've never seen before. That moment, it was the most overwhelming thing I ever experienced. But going into Buc-ee's gas station and seeing all of these happy people, and I just walked around like a zombie, like a shell of a human. Just, I don't know how else to explain it. I wasn't inside my body. My body was just in this robotic movement of moving because I knew I was supposed to.
I just got out of the joint, but right now is my first time on my first pass and my first time being free.
I feel relief. That's the first word that came to my mind. I just feel relieved, and I feel filled with gratitude.
I literally could cry, but I'm not going to do that. It's really, really wild, the things that we take for granted. We absolutely take it for granted. I know that's the most cliche thing I could possibly say right now, but I have taken so much for granted.
The moment that I got to see them for the first time was I got to do home confinement at a friend's house in Indiana, which is a whole story in itself. But I was there, and they were driven to me to the house that I was doing home confinement at. And I could see them jumping up and down in the back seat, and they opened the doors and they ran to me, and it was an immediate, I remember my son like doing this, so excited, and just running straight to me. And both of them, I had, they just wrapped their arms and legs around me, and I picked them up and held them and smelled them and cried, and it was a very, very happy moment. And I guess that word again, I felt relief. Like I felt like I could breathe for the first time that I had them. Yeah, prison sucks. 10 out of 10, do not recommend. However, for me, I've always set myself on fire to keep other people warm, and I burn the candle at both ends. One way I deal with crisis in my own life is to keep myself busy. So having time to actually heal from all of the trauma, although I thought I did, I really hadn't, because I never slowed down enough to heal. And I'm a believer, and I think God gave me opportunities to do healing in the free world. And I tried to drive the car myself instead of letting Jesus take the wheel and do it my own way. And I nosedived like into trouble, which tends to be what happens when we do things on our own. And in my mind, God said, okay, and he plucked me out of society and he put me on timeout. Not to be punitive, but out of love, because honestly, without suffering, I don't know that I would be close to God or appreciate the things or take the time to do the healing without the suffering of being isolated, is what I mean. I was finally in this space where I wasn't able to preoccupy myself with taking care of other humans or go do events or go out with friends or date or anything. I didn't have men to sidetrack me. I didn't have my friends to sidetrack me. I didn't have drama or of friends or family, and I didn't have to take care of my children. I wanted to take care of my children, but I didn't have that excuse to avoid myself anymore. And so I only had time to sit and reflect in my own thoughts. And I got closer to God than I've ever been. I shed weight. I got physically fit. I worked out 2 times a day. I helped start activities in prison for other women and tried to reach out to them, helped some women learn how to type a little bit. I was a listening ear as much as I could be for people, was part of the Bible study, helped start an addiction group there, organized an Easter service, sunrise service, and a lot of other things, helped with a Zumba group. And it was, as much as prison is awful, there were some real positives. There were people there I needed to meet to be part of my healing journey. And maybe they were supposed to meet me too, I don't know. But I know that I'm forever changed because of the individuals that I met there, for the better. And I never would have met them had I not had that experience. And I never would have truly met myself had I not had that experience. So people have continued to reach out to me about my story, about the documentary. There still are people in my orbit that hadn't seen it and didn't even know it existed until recently. And they're like, how did I miss this? Sometimes I'm just really transparent when they ask me a question over the last year and I say, well, I lost 60 pounds. Well, how did you do that? Well, I worked out all the time. Oh, what did you do for your workout? And sometimes I think I at times like a shocking reaction. So I'm like, oh, I went to prison. And then they're like, ha ha ha, but really, what did you do? And I'm like, I went to prison. And then it opens the door for a conversation. Women messaging me about their friend who's in a domestic violence situation and what should she do. I've had some speaking engagements. I've been asked to go speak at Ball State University, my alma mater, coming up here this spring for their Women's Week, and also going to speak at a law class about my story. And I spoke recently in Toronto, Canada over Zoom because they were doing a study on intimate partner violence, and I was selected to tell my story to help inform their policy making surrounding intimate partner violence. Today, I just signed papers for new employment, and it was hard when it said, do you have any criminal convictions? And for the first time, I had to write, yes. I'm still building my life with the rocks that were thrown at me, but I'm still rebuilding, and I'm not going to be a nobody. I am determined to be a somebody and make a difference. But I have some obstacles still to overcome. To this day, he's never personally addressed me about it, and I have to be careful what I say because we are still in the middle of a custody battle. I'm not hopeful that I will get my children. However, I have a wonderful team, legal team, and, I think the system is just hard. The way that the process works is so complicated and definitely not a one-size-fits-all situation. And I don't know that the court is going to now take them from that physical space and then uproot them back to where they were. That I haven't lost hope, and at the very minimum, I at least want them to know that I fought for them to come home. And something that I told myself is, although the youth years, actually a friend told me this and I've internalized it. The years of their youth and the years of our children are precious. And I will still, if I don't get them back, I will still be involved in their lives. The worst case scenario is I get them every other weekend and on holidays and breaks, and we'll visit them during the week when possible. I will still be involved, but one day they're going to grow up, and God willing, they'll be adults for way longer than when they were children, and they will have the ability to have a relationship with me no matter what anybody else says. And I believe they will, because our bond is strong. My babies and I are very close to one another. So I'm not hopeful that they will come home the way that I want them to come spring, but I'm confident that they will come home one day. My story scares some people, but here's the thing, is that you tell your story and you don't live in shame and you stand tall anyway. I am one of the lucky ones, for sure, that had my story told behind a film, shared with many people. There are women that are in there that I know want their stories heard and told, and there are others that just are silent still about their story because that's the culture of domestic violence.
I'm doing good. I'm really good.